Hi guys. Sorry to have waken you up. I hope the lunch won't be too heavy on your little stomachs. Welcome to this session about Spring Boot for DevOps. As you can see, I prepared the slides for this event. It's not a copy-paste of some other event. I'm Nicola Frankel. By day, I'm a Hybris consultant, so I'm working for SAP, which has bought Hybris. Hybris is an e-commerce platform based on Spring and Java. And by night, I do a lot of other stuff because I'm a geek. Let's face it. Doesn't make me popular with girls, but it's fun. And today, I'm here to talk about Spring Boot and DevOps. And as you might know, DevOps has many possible interpretation. So, is it that Spring Boot will help your development and operational team work better together? I'm sorry, Spring Boot cannot help you with that. You will have to work on the human side of stuff. Is it to treat your infrastructure as code, like perhaps Spring just made a new Ansible or a new Chef or a new Puppet? No, again, doesn't work. This is in addition. Again, you won't automate everything with Spring Boot. In this talk, DevOps for me means gathering information about your application. And you can have generic information, you can have metrics, and you can have health checks. But before going into the subject, I would like you to tell you about a little story. As you might notice, it doesn't end well. So, you are developers, right? Who here is a developer? Great. Who here is not a developer? Hey guys, what are you doing here? 45 minutes, it's a long, long time. Okay, so most of you are developers, so probably you will understand what I mean. So, you've developed your cool new application, and it's good, it's Friday, so you will be happy to go on weekend and enjoy life. So you call the ops guy and tell him, hey, just finished my application, I would just like to deploy it. And the guy asks you, okay, did you finish the operational manual, like the instruction to how to set up, how to install, how to configure everything? And you tell him, because you are an experienced developer, you tell him, yeah, sure, I did it. You are very proud of that because, yeah, you made the mistake of not doing that a few years ago, but now you know the drill. Okay, but inside this document, do you have like a matrix or a table where for such an exception with such error code, there is an action required? Sure. Great. I've just one little question, my last one. How can I monitor the application? That's what you forgot. In fact, you are not responsible for that because you implemented the specification right to the letter. Unfortunately, specifications are only about functional requirements. Performance, probably outside. Logging, outside. Monitoring, outside. Blah, blah, blah. So you have three options. The first option is to go to your project manager and to ask for more budget, please. Generally speaking, project managers don't like that. They might allow it, but probably you will give a bad review for your annual review. The other option is to go to the project manager to force the deployment to production. At this time, it's possible, it might work, because sure, project manager and business have much more power than the ops team. But if something bad happens, probably it will be your fault. and you will be the one to be woken up at 4 a.m. in the morning because the application stopped working for no reason. The third option is, hey, it's Friday, and you didn't plan anything for the weekend, so you still have time to hack something on your own. And yeah, all three options really suck, right? And I ended up as being this guy more than once. And so I discovered very nifty stuff about Spring, and more precisely Spring Boot. Like, Spring Boot can offer you out of the box, really out of the box, stuff that will meet your non-functional requirements, like metadata, like monitoring, but also about configuration of your beans, about the value of your property in a specific environment, the controller mappings, stuff that if your application is too big, is very hard to get just by reading the code. I've talked enough. Who knows about the Spring Pet Clinic? 3 guys, hey, come on. Okay, so the Spring Pet Clinic is a demo application of Spring Boot, and I will use the revamped version that uses, Spring Pet Clinic is about Spring, and I will use the revamped version about Spring Boot. So the application is already existing. Someone did it for me. It's a Spring Boot project. I will just run it for your, like that. There is a lot of stuff. It starts in perhaps 5 or 6 seconds. And we can check the results. Okay, this is a Spring Pet Clinic, and we have to just be authentified to use the application. And then afterwards, we can search for owners. There is a list. It's paginated. We can find veterinarians. We can also check that the errors are nicely handled, whatever. Okay, so this is really a demo application. What I will do is I will just, and if you have to remember something about this talk, is about what I'm doing to do right now. I will add a new dependency, and I will add the Spring Boot starter actuator dependency. So I don't need to use the version because I'm using the Spring Boot parent, POM. And if I rerun the stuff, everything that I told you will appear magically. Convention over configuration. It's really great. Look, I told you about metrics. I have metrics. I'm not saying it is readable. I'm saying you have metrics, right? I was telling you about health checks. Look, I have health checks. I told you about, and then I forgot the stuff, metadata, properties, controller mappings. I have all the controller mappings in my application readily available. I told you about properties and stuff like that. So right out of the box, I've got that. That's very cool, right? However, as you noticed, it's not very readable. So the first stuff is to make it readable. I have my friend GitHub because I don't have everything in my head, so I will just copy paste stuff. So as who here already knows Spring Boot? Half of the room. Okay. So if you don't know about Spring Boot, everything can be configured in the application.properties stuff. So here I will just make it bigger. And I will just add this property. And restart. And just by adding this property, didn't wait enough. Much better, right? I don't remember the name of the endpoint. Config props. Okay. So I have everything here. So again, if you remember, one thing is just add the actuator dependency. It's really great. Now, in your application, what the basic requirements that probably you have to act yourself if you use standard Spring or not Spring at all is the version of the application, but also the application artifact ID from Maven or group ID, or anything that you might want to be set like that. Because it's so easy to go in production and don't know about the version of your application. Who has ever had to hack a custom stuff to check the version of his application in production? How the others do? Like, you don't know the version that is deployed, or do you use HF or Ansible to know, or Docker or whatever? No, okay, no feedback. Still a little sleepy. So the stuff is we can add any property that we want. Like, let's have this info dot, let's say, application dot cool property, which is jDays. It's cool. Restarts. The problem is there is no way to use durable or stuff like that. So this is static stuff. But still, you can put anything in here, and it's standard accessible with the info endpoint. What I usually do when I hack something myself is I need the Maven coordinates, including the version. So if you hack that yourself, you probably do like that, artifact ID, and here you use Maven filtering. Who knows about Maven filtering? Okay, not so many people. So Maven filtering is a way that when you build your application, you will use special like dollar and curly braces to take stuff from your POM and print it in any of your file. So you would do something like that, project dot artifact ID, like that. And then you have to configure Maven to use resources filtering, saying that this folder will be done. If you use Spring Boot, it's better. You just do that. And I will also use the group ID because I'm group ID. Interesting. I will also the group ID and also the version. And just by adding that, Spring Boot parent POM, because I inherit from Spring Boot parent POM, sorry, I inherit from Spring Boot parent POM, I will get automatically the stuff filtered. Three lines of configuration, automatic. Now it can get better because version can come from the POM, but also the version can come from the Git commit or stuff like that. So probably I would like to also have some Git information because my build process might be real bad. How do you do that? You don't do that directly. Again, I will just use an existing plugin for that. And the funny stuff is it's from a Polish guy that is a Scala guru, and it does stuff for Maven, so thanks him. I will comment it in a second. Just go to the right section and here. So what we see here is we will bind we will use a revision goal, so it will be by default bound to the process resources, I think, phase in Maven. And here you have to remember to use those two configuration lines. The first is generate Git property file. This plugin generates a Git property file, but you forget that it will just output the Git information in the console, which probably is not very interesting to you. Second line is, and that is a bad default, I think. By default, it will generate the git.properties file into your src directory. So you will be part of your sources, which really is a bad idea. So what I do is I put it in the target directory. Now, if I do that again, yeah, there will be a lot of stopping and starting. If any of you have any joke at the time, it would be a great time to hear them while we are reloading. And here I have stuff. So I have the Git branch, the Git commit ID, Git commit time, everything I need. And if we look under the cover, like where I see Git properties, we see that the date, yeah, at least people in the front can see that it has been just generated. And if we open it, there are a lot of information. You don't need to read them, but there are a lot of information, but it seems that Spring Boot only takes 3. So there are techniques to get everything in there. The problem is right now the code of Spring Boot is just not a map, it's just a real class with those 3 attributes. So it's, if you want to take everything, it's possible. You just need to hack something. And I don't have time to show you, but in some version of this talk, I show it to the audience. So you might find them online. Okay, so metadata. And in 5 lines of configuration, I've got everything I needed. Now, health checks. Health checks are very important because your application doesn't live like in space. It has dependencies. It has dependencies on the file system, probably, because if the file system is full, your application might break because of logging and stuff like that. You have dependency probably on the database. You might have dependency on web services and stuff like that. And if those dependencies break, your application will be down. That's why they're called dependencies. And so those health checks are a great way to monitor your application, because if those health checks are up, it doesn't mean that your application is up, but if those health checks are down, it means that your application is down, right? It's like a Bloom filter. So you would have an health check wrapping each of your dependencies. And each check returns an health object. And those health objects have a status up and down, and you have more, but let's say just up and down are enough. And you might also want to provide details. At the end, you will go to the health endpoint, and the health endpoint will query about all the health objects that are inside your Spring context and aggregate them. If at least one is down, your application will be marked as down, and it will be transformed, serialized into JSON. and also it manages the HTTP code. So the bean must implement else indicator, and for those of you who use the old version of Spring Boot, like 1.2 something, they use drop wizard else check. They don't anymore. So let's have a little demo. For that, I will just create a new, where I am, configuration, I am in resource, that's not good. Here, I will create a new health. Oh, sorry. Before that, I will just show you how it works. So I will just check there, the else endpoint. Okay, again. I will use the Google developer stuff. And here, I have no error. Everything is working or not? No. Thanks. So here, I have code 200, which means, great guy, you did a good stuff. And we see that I have two different dependency, disk space, so the disk, and the database. Both are up, so my application is considered up. Now, what I will do, I will add a new dependency. And this dependency, I don't care what it will be, but in this case, what I like is to use a Spring Boot start data solar, which is here. Basically, it tells Spring Boot that I will use a Solar instance. But I have no Solar instance on my machine, and it expects one. So if I restart the stuff, and if I didn't lie, then probably something magical will appear. Yeah? Like that. Like I've got a 503 exception. The HTTP status is 503, meaning that you don't need your ops team to have JSON scraping stuff. It just can be used with the standard HTTP code. Plus, we see here that the Solar dependency is down because it expected to have a Solar instance at this address, and so the application is down. And that's great. So that means that when I use some starters from Spring Boot, they are already wrapped in dependency in else checks. Now, if you want to get further, probably you will want to create your own. Let's say that you want to use a web service, and this web service is really required by your application, so I will want to create my own else check. So the first stuff is to use a configuration class. You know about that, right? I don't have to explain that configuration must be annotated with configuration, right? Great. And I will create a new bean method, like public, so it's, health check indicator, health indicator. I will call it like my bean, my custom indicator. And I don't forget to use add bean. Very easy to forget about this kind of stuff, especially in live coding. Return a new health indicator, and here I will have my health object. And let's say that I want everything to work very nicely, so I will use health dot up dot with detail. Hey, things are cool in Sweden. When I mean cool, really cool. And build. Sorry, I forgot about the key. It's key value, because it's JSON. What did I forget? Normally, it should work. Any jokes? Anyone? Yeah, I know some, but there are girls in the room. Yeah, I'm French, sorry. So here, I have got my custom indicator, status up, and the key in SIGs are cool in Sweden. And that's how you can easily create your own else check. And you have to decide what is down and what is up. That's the only problem that you have to resolve, but that can be done for you. That's cool, right? How many minutes I have still? So 20 minutes. I might also check, show you. For example, here we see that the bean, my custom indicator, so the method is my custom indicator, so the bean name is my custom indicator. So in the end, the name, the key name is my custom indicator. If you want something that is a little different, for example, with spaces, now how is it? Name, sure it was name. IDE can be really destructive to your understanding of stuff. So if you have to, your own standards, your ops team decide to name the keys like they want, you can have spaces, you can have whatever. You don't need to have exactly the method name. Okay, the last part is about the metrics, because even if every one of your dependency is working fine, your application might not. For example, you might have too many connections, your web server doesn't work so well, or many stuff. And metrics are also a good way to monitor your application. Who knows about drop wizard metrics? Not so many people. Okay, drop wizard metrics are really great because they model like the metrics, like Spring Batch did for batches. They model the metrics. It's very simple. Also, what they provide you is exporter to dedicated backends. For the model, let's just talk about two simple metrics, gauge, and gauge is a simple value. For example, a good example of gauge is the page response time. So you load the page, check the value, reload the page, check the value. Those are gauges, and you might have a nice graph. Another kind of metric is a counter. And basically, the counter is just a gauge that increments itself. A good example of counter is the number of views for a specific page, because the value at time X depends on the value of the previous time. Those kind of stuff are already accessible in GMX. Who knows about GMX? Okay, nearly everyone. Great. So let's skip that. Who knows about the G-console? Little less. G-console is a great stuff because it lets you access the GMX metrics. And you just do G-console, and you have the stuff here for you. So you can connect to your Spring Boot application, say, yeah, I want unsecure stuff, and you will see all the mbeans available. And you can see already there are some stuff in GMX. Of course, this is already accessible in over HTTP. But again, your ops team might need to scrap this stuff, and probably they already have connectors for GMX. So what we will do is just get them and put them in GMX. Demo time. Since I want things to be decoupled, I will create a new metrics config. Better. And here I must have, I think it's a metrics exporter. And when you don't remember, you ask GitHub, hey, GitHub, please, just give me the stuff that I need. Very convenient. So basically, I create the bin method again. Don't ask me why, but you have to annotate it with export metric 1. I just don't know why, it's the way it is. And we will wrap the GMX metric writer in the so-called mbin exporter that will be injected directly into your stuff. And at this point, if I start, I forgot something. It should crash. And it doesn't. It doesn't crash. So let's see if we've got stuff in GMX, but I'm very, very, very afraid. We have something in GMX, so probably they changed. Right now, what we can do is let's go to the application itself and let's fool around and check owners, veterinarians, errors, veterinarians, owners, inbox, error, to get some metrics. And what was accessible through the HTTP endpoint is now accessible in GMX. Again, 3 lines of code. So that's very easy, and you've got the same stuff. Now, let's go a little further, because GMX is great, but probably, or that depends on your ops team, they don't know how to get to connect to GMX. So let's go back to Drop Wizard. I told you previously that Drop Wizard is great because they have a model, and then they have exporter to backends. They provide exporters to HTTP. We don't care. We already have them by default in Spring Boot. They export to GMX. Again, we don't care. We have them in Spring Boot. But your ops team probably have such nice dashboard like Graphite, and they are not part of Spring Boot. So we probably have to use Drop Wizard metrics. Who knows about Graphite? Half the room. So okay, let's have a demo. Graphite is great because it gives you just a nice dashboard for checking metrics. And I will Vagrant up. Yeah, I'm not cool, I'm not using Docker, guys, but the Vagrant VM was available and it works really great. Meanwhile, I will just check that it works. Yes, I have my Graphite browser here. So far, we don't have so many stuff. Here is the old that I did for the last demo, but at this point, there is nothing available in the graph. Like if we set in the last 3 minutes, we have nothing to show. Auto refresh. Now what I would like is to have this kind of stuff that I had in GMX in Graphite. I had one simple dependency, and this dependency is the Drop Wizard Graphite, and then I had a new bean to my configuration. I will just comment just 2 seconds. Okay, here you see that there is a metric registry. The metric registry is something available from Drop Wizard. So by saying that, you are saying, hey, I will need a metric registry. Please Spring Boot inject it for me. Normally, since I didn't instantiate one myself, it should break. the good thing here is that Spring Boot uses default stuff. And once you have the drop wizards, a dependency, set as your dependency in your class path, Spring Boot will create an instance of metrics registry for you if you don't have one. You just then say, hey guys, Graphite will run on localhost or whatever on this port. You will tell it to use a registry. You don't forget to have some prefix. You build it, and more importantly, you start it. If you forget to do that, you would get nothing. Very easy to forget. And yeah, that's the format, so you return it, but in this case, you don't do nothing with it. Now, if I restart my Spring Boot application, and I go here, again, like it's just to get some data points. I'm not testing the app, actually. It might sound like, but it's not. I'm not testing. Okay. Okay, I might have enough data points right now. And now, we can see that on the Graphite browser, I will just redo that for the last 5 minutes, and then I will add some data points like Spring Boot, health check, I didn't use it. Let's say some Gauge, because I might have better stuff like root and vets, list, star. So far, it doesn't work so well. Yes. You're right. Thank you very much. You saved me from one big shame in front of everyone. Thank you very much. And that's the funnest part about live demo. And you are excused, of course. Yeah, I have some data points. Here I will get to oops, because I like this one. And if I go back there and I make some other kind of hoops, and hoops, and hoops. And yeah, the auto refresh is not fast enough in my opinion. So yeah, you can see that there is some metrics in here. And that's how you get everything into Graphite. Now the problem is in development, probably you don't have Graphite. And if you don't have Graphite, Spring Boot won't be so happy about that. It will try to send stream stuff, data, to a non-existing Graphite. So basically, there are ways to achieve that, like you can have a conditional on missing bin and use a profile, like in any Spring Boot application, meaning that you have a development profile, and in the development profile, you will say, okay, I won't use Graphite, and I will just send stuff to GMX. Otherwise, I will send to Graphite. So that will be good for production, since the development profile won't be there. Or you might have more advanced architecture, and that's what we did at my latest job, is we use something called GMX trends, which just take stuff from GMX and put it to Graphite and send it to Graphite. And the good thing in that case is that your application is not responsible for data transmission. So there is nice decoupling from an architecture point of view. Before I finish, I would just like to remind you that metrics are not only technical. It seems that only technical guys are interested about metrics, about monitoring, about logging. This is far from the truth. You might get business support to this use case if you tell your business users that they can also show what what pages are the most viewed on your site, or about funnels if they don't have Google Analytics and stuff like that. So that might be a way to get them more interested about metrics and monitoring and stuff. You might find you might find the code that I used on the branch DevOps 1.3 on this GitHub stuff. You can follow me on Twitter, you can become my friend on LinkedIn, and you can follow my blog. At this point, I will be very happy if you have any questions. Or it was super clear. Or yes, it was not super clear. Okay, so the question is this feature production ready, and how much does it affect performance? That's a good question. I will try to rephrase it in another way that will probably seem funny. So, it is better to don't know anything about your application, but have speed X, than to know many things, but have speed X minus, let's say, 5%. If I rephrase it like so, what do you think? Then that really depends on what you are using. Are you just sending to GMX? Probably, it's probably less than 1%. Probably. You just have to do the stuff for yourself. And if you are sending to GMX and using GMX trends, you have no problem with that. Measure disturbs. Measure. So sure, every time you log, every time you measure, you have a small performance drop. But in my opinion, that will be always better, even if you have 10% performance drop, than just going blindfolded and running around. Because you can be very fast, but if you go in the wrong direction, you have no clue. And your ops team, they can put one more RAM, or you can scale horizontally, but they cannot go without logging with metrics, without health checks. So it's not only about performance. Only perhaps if you have like Amazon, like, okay, but still they log, and they are happy to lose some performance to log anyway. Does it answer your question? Other questions from non-developers? Yes, sorry, that was easy. Yeah. And that's a very good question. So the question is, did I try the actuator without Spring Boot? And I had the same problem as you, and I had the same question as you. So what I did is I approached the Spring Boot guys at Spring 1 last year, and that is their answer. You can use it without Spring Boot, with only normal Spring, but it's not trivial. I think that this answer means you better migrate to Spring Boot than try to hack your own stuff. At least that's what I concluded. Other questions? Yeah. Excuse me, what can I do with? That is outside the scope of Spring Boot, right? It really depends on your ops team. Probably you can have, I'm not a production guy myself, I'm not an ops guy, but I know that, yeah, you can put the data send streaming to everything you want, and some tools like Nagios and stuff have such kind of alarms that can send SMS or whatever. So yeah, but that is completely outside of my knowledge, so I cannot give you really precise data about that. what we saw, however, is that it's quite easy to send data to anything that you have exporter for, and if there is not, you can use your own. But probably the tools that are there are enough. Like GMX is probably enough because GMX is very widespread. Other questions? Thank you very much.